Shall we play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky, all up in your podcast. It's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for pressing play. As always, I think I have a very interesting show. I'm really looking forward to it. Today, we're going to be talking about comic books, self-publishing comic books, a little bit of role-playing games, because that's actually how my guest and I actually met at a role-playing game convention where he was selling comic books, and then later I played in a GURPS Dungeon Fantasy game with him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we got to know and chat. And then, of course, yes, a lot of people are here, probably for the podcast version. I'm not sure about the whatnot version. But some people are here because of Comicsgate. So we will talk about Comicsgate as well. However, there is more to my guest than just Comicsgate. So there will be some discussion that's not Comicsgate, just to warn you now. Because I know there's some people that are very passionate about Comicsgate. So my guest is Preston. Oh, go ahead, Preston.
It was interesting that like you brought that one up when you were like, hey, I'd like to have you on. I wanted to talk about, like, oh man, you don't talk about that. Why do you want to talk about that? That attracts.
Well, when I first told you, I think last year when we were playing GURPS, I said, hey, I want to have you on the show because I know you self-publish comic books. I didn't even realize at that point. I didn't realize at that point of your involvement with Comicsgate, but there's a lot of people out there interested in that. So I wanted you to have the opportunity to give your side of things. So having said all that, my guest is Preston Poulter, the publisher of Pocket Jacks Comics, among other things, game player. I think, am I right in understanding you used to be a professional poker player?
I mean, I did that for a few years. Yeah, it was, it was a fun job. I miss it. Oh yeah, I did that. And,
oh really?
Yeah, and it was at the poker table where I first got my comic idea. So I don't know, just went home and started working on it. Yeah, and here we are. Now, since we've done the same shows, like did I sell you any of my comic books?
Yeah, I have. I mean, if you could see on the camera on StreamYard, I'm holding up White Lily #1 and the White Lily, which I know you publish a lot of different stuff, but the White Lily grabbed my attention, which is of course about the female fighter aces in Russia. Right.
Yes.
Right. So and you actually mentioned, I think last year when we were gaming, you said that White Lily was like the closest thing you'll ever do to a work of art, or so. I can't remember how you put it.
I mean, to me, it was about beauty, and just I think it's a beautiful story, and it moves people, and I'm glad. Obviously, not any one thing can be all things to all people, but people seem to like it, and I'm glad. I know John Lamont talks about he sells my books out there in Florida, and it's like the one book he goes to when people are coming by and they're not like special interest, but they're like, oh, it's like a lady in college or something. He'll pitch White Lily first, and a lot of times that'll be like his first sale at the con. So it's a good general purpose story. It's about finding purpose in the face of death. So I'm glad you enjoyed that one, as opposed to Palace of the Golden Princess, which I talk all about at the RPG cons because it has that RPG tie-in.
Right.
Right. And I got the idea for that one at North Texas RPG Con. It was like the first con I did coming out of quarantine, like way back in, I want to say like 2022 or something. And that was a great con, and it was like the first con I got to do coming out of quarantine, and I sold a lot. And that was when I was like, wow, I need to do something for this audience because there's clearly people who buy here.
Right.
Oh, that's when I started developing Palace.
There's a lot of crossover between comics and tabletop RPG gamers. I mean, they're definitely, if you put my Venn diagram of hobbies, then comics and RPGs are two of the big circles. So, and it's a great con. I agree. So let's just go ahead and let's just, since we started off mainly talking about, I'll tell you what, let me ask this stuff and then we'll get to the comics. So you did some professional poker playing.
Yes.
Did I not, and I also see that you're involved or have an interest in making movies.
Yes.
Or at least at one time. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've made one movie, Standoff at Sparrow Creek. I went to a college prep school here, and I reconnected with one of my old high school classmates, and he's got a really interesting life story, which he put in a book called Standing Up to China. But basically, he was general counsel for a Chinese telecom company called ZTE, and ended up being a whistleblower, and the biggest whistleblower. It was like billions of dollars that he revealed that his employer was doing. And I'm going to try and help bring that story to life. So that's kind of like the next one I'm working on. And, if people have scripts, I certainly will talk about them. And like kind of the purpose of making these trade paperbacks, like White Lily, for instance, it started as a screenplay. It could be something that they develop as a movie. So I've always kind of got a focus on making things that are appropriate for film.
Right. Okay. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, some stories adapt better to comic books. Some stories are maybe better for film. Okay. Fair enough.
But I try to, like, for instance, let's have 5 issues and put it in a trade paperback, like for Guinevere and what Palace will be. These are roughly film length size stories. They're convenient for a book. They're convenient for a film.
Right.
Yeah. So,
okay. Cool. Yeah. And then last, I'm not sure are you the same Preston Poulter that used to do competitive Magic: The Gathering? Because there's a Preston Poulter out there. Okay, so that was you. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my God, what do you want to know?
How long did you do that for? Because I'm literally finding cards online.
Yes.
Where you've signed them, and people, they have a value attached to them that you signed them, and then I find, Preston Poulter was a semifinalist, and here was his deck list and all that.
Yes.
So how long? So do you
all true?
So do you still play Magic, or is that something you used to do? No. Okay.
No, I do not play Magic. I stopped doing that a long while ago. That was something I got on like the very first Pro Tour way back when. And
it was mid-90s.
Really easy to yeah. This was 96, so I played in the first 2 Pro Tours I ever had in 96, and I made the top 8, and that was back when who even knew what the Magic: The Gathering Pro Tour was or whether you could make a living off of it. And anyway, I didn't do particularly well after that and moved on with life. But yeah, like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to talk to you about that." Like, it was a thing I did. I mean, do you want to talk about the deck I played way back when?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was playing Magic at the same time. I jumped in on Magic for a few years. Like Beta had just stopped and Unlimited had just started coming out. So the first real, and then so I played for several years. I had friends that bought booster packs and booster boxes, didn't open them, and ended up like trading them for cars and stuff like that. So, like, put it this way, we used to play. Because it used to say the rules said ante, and whoever wins the match keeps it. Dude, I can remember like Mox Pearl being an ante, and nobody knew.
Wow.
Like, okay, whatever. I mean, nobody knew. It was all brand new. I mean, my brain is telling me I can remember that, but I definitely remember Mox Pearl just being another card. Oh, that's a handy card. And then, because we didn't understand the advantage of that colorless mana at that point. But anyway, all right.
We're not really going to talk too much about Magic and Moxes, are we?
We're moving on. No, we're moving on right now. So I just want to I want to paint a picture of who my guest is, because some people think, oh, you just do comics. Other people think, oh, you're just involved with legal stuff because of, Comicsgate. No, there's a whole life here. There's a whole set of interests. So
there is.
Yeah. So, and by the way, Whatnot, I can see the chat. So if anybody wants me to ask Preston something, I'll try to work it in, and then Preston can see his own chat too, obviously. So yeah. So quick note, during this podcast, you're going to hear myself and Preston mention Whatnot, the chat, comments in the chat. What's going on is, as I was recording this episode with Preston so that I could later edit it and publish it. He actually did a live stream on his Whatnot channel. So they got the raw, whatever, just warts and all as it was happening live. And we were actually able to, at times, respond to comments in the chat. So that's what's going on there. There's not normally a live chat going on during Shane Plays Geek Talk episodes.
For people out there in Whatnot world, I'm going to give away a Snow White sticker. So there.
How do they win it? Is it random? Do you just do a random?
It's random.
How
I'm
do they win
going
it?
to click giveaway, and then they just have to say that they won it. And as soon as I can find
so the
it.
giveaway.
This will give me a minute to go find it and add it to the show anyway. All right. So next question.
Okay.
What were we saying?
Yeah, just moving on. So we got my guest is comic book publisher, movie maker, and then used to be a professional poker player and also used to be a professional Magic player. So and plays tabletop RPGs. So a man of many interests. So let's get to the more meaty stuff here. And for those of you that are listening or in Whatnot or whatever, just because you want to hear about Comicsgate, we will get to that.
Okay.
But I want to talk a little bit about Pocket Jack's comics. So I'm always fascinated when I talk to self-publishers or people who are working with small publishers. I always like to give an opportunity to talk about, and I won't go too deep into this because it can be boring, I'm sure, for some people and for you. But what are the economics? Like, how hard is it to break even, or like to do all the self-publishing yourself? I mean, what's it like to, you're not only coming up with the ideas and maybe working with an artist and all that, but you're having to publish it yourself and make the covers look good and have distribution channels and all that.
What are the economic? All right. So John Lamont, who I've helped, he had no comic career before he started working with me. And now, like most recently, he just raised $17,000 on issue 4 of one of his series. Anyway, so he's doing well for himself. And he's made about, this will be his 8th or 9th, I think. And he's still in debt to the whole process. So if you want to ask, and he's been at it a couple of years. Self-publishing is a tough game generally. It's a bit easier for comics because there's a market there and you can go after that, particularly, like if you're offering scantily clad ladies, because people seem to buy those covers, and hooray. So, I mean, like Guinevere, which is not a story which will be debuting in Diamond Distribution this month. That's a story that sold a lot more than White Lily on Kickstarter, for instance, because, people, sexy covers, people buy it. Whereas, White Lily is a war story and blah. But anyway.
Right. Well, it's, attractive women, but not necessarily sexy on a cover. So, but attractive women doing heroic things in White Lily. So, is it, I have no idea. I know some people that self-publish. I know people that, would have been considered Comicsgate or came out of Comicsgate at one time. How hard, how much of your time is, I got to deal with this stupid, the printer, or finding a printer that doesn't eat up all your profit and stuff like that? I mean, is that a real pain, or do you? I mean,
it can be. I was sad in that the printer who did that White Lily trade paperback that you have seems to be kind of out of the business, or, I really wasn't able to get in touch with. So, this finding a good vendor, particularly as, a small company, if you're printing a whole bunch of books, then I think finding a good printer to serve you is easy. But when you're small and you're trying to keep down your inventory and just printing a few, or, as small a print run as you can manage, then it's tricky to find, someone who can deliver for you. But.
Right. Yeah.
Just like with artists, it's tough to find, an artist who's going to deliver and be professional, all that good jazz.
So how long have you been publishing comic books?
Since roughly about 2016.
Okay. And you literally said you were playing professional poker. You had an idea for a comic book, and is that what kicked it off? Or
yes.
Did you have any experience publishing before you jumped in?
No.
No, you just jumped in and said, let's see what happens. Okay.
Yes. What a long, strange trip it's been.
Has it been worth it?
Yeah, I like I like going to conventions. I like meeting people who have, read my work before, and they like it. They want more of it. Yeah, I have a lot of positive interactions at conventions with people, and I like that. I want to, keep going along and doing that. For that matter, I'm mentoring other comic book creators. I mentioned John Lamont. There's also a guy whose books I'm going to be doing a stream for next week. Brack Geiler, I believe his name is, out of New Mexico. So he did, I think, over 10. I think he did like 12 or 13,000 with alien pterodactyls, and I was happy to help him with that. And I'm happy to help people. By the way, congratulations to whoever the winner here is. Cheyenne. Congratulations. Cheyenne gets a Snow White sticker. There you go. Cheyenne was like, I have to enter my address for this app. I'm like, it's so I can send you stickers. But, it's, I enjoy, I've transitioned from kind of being an active dad. Now my daughter's about to graduate college. And so but what do I do next now that I'm not, taking odd jobs like professional poker player to be around her? And I found I like self-publishing. I like conventions. I like meeting people. Guinevere's debuting in Diamond this month. That's exciting. I certainly hope I sell a bunch of those. It's, it gives life purpose to go and build fans and meet people and build and to make art. So
you're and there's nothing wrong with crowdfunding. There's a ton of people out there putting out some great books using the crowdfunding model. Yes. But it sounds like with Guinevere that you're moving into, I'm going to get listed in Diamond, and then comic book stores will order my book, and then people will ask the comic book store to order my book. So you're going through a whole different delivery method now. So you've got with Kickstarter and other crowdfunding, you know exactly how many to print because you know how many people bought it. What is it? So when you do the a print run for Diamond, how do you adapt to that different calculus? How do you know how much to print?
They send you a PO for exactly what they want.
Oh, okay. So Diamond says we think your book will sell this much. So
no. Diamond solicits. Okay. Diamond's going to solicit, and then they'll come back and say, okay, here's what we need to fulfill what people have bought. And you've got like 3 weeks to get it to us. And that's where, hopefully you're working with a good printer who's going to be able to turn that around for it. Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't realize that the printing didn't happen until after the soliciting happened in Diamond. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's interesting to know. So, and how hard is it to get into Diamond? Can anybody do it, or do they have like
not easy? Let me put it this way. Everyone I've talked to in the comic circle, which includes stores, it includes comic artists, at conventions. When I say, so I'm debuting in Diamond, they all say the exact same. Congratulations! It's something of note. It's not easy to do.
Well, good for you. Yeah, well, good for you. Yeah, most of the publishers I've met over the past few years, most of them are doing the crowdfunding route, but I know a few that are, doing, like getting into bookstores through Diamond and stuff like that. So, and this is a great time to ask, and then we'll move over into the other stuff, which you're pretty sure everybody's waiting to hear about. So what are your best sellers? I mean, you've got White Lily. Are you hoping that Guinevere will be a big seller, or has it already sold well? Has it been out there? I mean,
it's already sold well at conventions, but I certainly hope it sells well in Diamond.
Okay. So I'm hoping. So give us a quick. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying I was hoping for Guinevere.
Okay. So just to give people an idea of, like, hey, I've never heard of Pocket Jack's comics. Give us a quick elevator pitch on Guinevere, on White Lily, and then also on the one that you said was the one that was kind of RPG adjacent.
So I have 3
quick.
comics right now, which you can all go to my website and download. So go to pocketjackscomics.com, and then right there on the main page are all 3 stories that you can get an issue 1 delivered right to your inbox as a PDF just by signing up for the email list. And then I will contact you when I'm doing Kickstarters. But there's White Lily, which is the story you read, the 2 deadliest female fighter pilots who ever lived, based on real historical events. There's Guinevere and the Divinity Factory, which, again, debuting in Diamond this month. It's, as I say to people at conventions, like Harry Potter, but slutty. The former stripper is out.
I said, okay, then.
Yeah. A former stripper out to become a witch is sent on a quest to demonstrate her character, during which time a succubus comes along as a trying to steal her soul.
We have a question, which I will introduce in after you give the elevator pitch on your other 2 comics.
Sure. And for Palace of the Golden Princess, that was the comic book I came up with at North Texas, because strange enough, I ran a D&D game during quarantine for Doug TeNapel, who's a comic book artist in Tennessee, and his son.
Yeah, I know Doug.
Doug and I are pals, and I enjoy the time I spend with Doug, and I appreciate Doug's integrity. So, but I was running a game for Doug TeNapel and his son, and I had on my computer very old, the Palace of the Silver Princess, because when Wizards of the Coast took over TSR in the late 90s, they're like, oh, hey, here's this old forgotten adventure that got destroyed way back when, and they put it up on their website, and I downloaded it, and so I offered to run it for Doug and his son, and in reading through it, I'm like, this has some salacious kink elements, hence why it got destroyed. And I'm like, I could probably play that up for a comic book. And so that's the series Palace of the Golden Princess, which does have a tie-in adventure for both Dungeons & Dragons 5e as well as Old School Essentials, depending on how you like to roll your dice. And I just looked this morning at the breakdowns for issue 5. So within the next 6 months, that should be done, and that will be debuted. Diamond's already approved that one for distribution, so I'm just waiting to schedule that towards later in the year. Thank you.
Yeah, as an RPG nerd and a comic nerd, I definitely want to check that one out. So we'll get to Liduva's question.
He just wanted to know about eBay and Etsy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Etsy doesn't work for me. I do use eBay. I sell a fair amount of stuff there, but not at the prices I tend to sell over here on Whatnot, where I just come to liquidate what must go in order to make room for what is new.
Take them out Friday, a whole new door.
Yeah, on Friday, for instance, because at one point I was going to conventions and I only had 3 or 4 issues of White Lily and Guinevere to sell, so I needed other books. So I used to carry and sell a lot of White Widow, which is a collaboration between Benny Powell and Jamie Tyndall. And at one point, it was really selling well. And since then, it's, those two have kind of on the out. So I have a whole box of White Widow. So on Friday, I'm just going to be on Whatnot shelling a lot of White Widow. But generally, what I like about Whatnot is that it's commerce focused. So it's, people listening can buy White Lily 5, for instance, over there in the store, right on the platform, as opposed to YouTube, which is about super chat and saying things focused. So I don't know. It just seems like a platform I like. Yeah.
All right. I'll get to Laduva has another question I want to get to here in a second.
I have never played Lamentations of the Flame Princess, but I met the guy and he seemed cool. That's all I know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say good things about it.
I will offer my thoughts here in a second, but I also what's the elevator pitch on White Lily? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but which seems to be one of your popular books. How would you elevator pitch White Lily?
So a Pole and a Ukrainian fought for the Soviet Air Force during the Second World War, and together they became the only 2 women in world history to ever become ace fighter pilots. Yeah,
but there's some human drama behind it too. Sure. Really great art. I hate that the original artist passed away after the first issue.
I know.
But there's great art.
Sad.
There's great art throughout the entire thing. It's a great story. It's got Hollywood action, human drama, and it's, of course, you've got the thing of women and fighter pilots, fighter combat in World War II on behalf of Russia. So, and they became aces. So, okay. And then I wanted to real quick also shout out to Doug Tin-Naple. Nice guy. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to know him over recent years. I've gone on his video stream a little bit when he used to do it back in the day. He's, of course, the inventor or creator of the Earthworm Jim video game.
Yes.
Yeah, he also does really good comic books like Bigfoot Bill and some other stuff. And then he also produced some of he produced the VeggieTales that was on Netflix. So and he's done other stuff too. He's a very creative guy. And cancel culture has tried to come after him, and he's basically Tefloned himself and come up with his own way of keeping in touch with his fan base. So that's interesting.
I really admire that about him.
Yeah, no, he's a cool guy. And he also did one of my favorite things in the world ever. Back in the 2000s, he did this thing called Sock Baby, which it was one of the first, way before everybody was making video on the internet. Him and his friends did this really fun video called Sock Baby. But anyway, all right. So, Liduva, you said, speaking of tabletop RPG, what is your guys' thoughts on Lamentations of the Flame Princess? So, I've never played it. I've seen it. I was at a con last year where the creator was there. He flew in. He lives in Europe. Him and his girlfriend, or maybe it was his wife, I'm not sure, flew in. He was running games, and they had all their products set up. And those are some of the most beautiful, amazingly produced role-playing game books I've ever seen. Absolutely beautiful to look at. Every one of them is a work of art. I've never played it, and I have heard that the content can be quite adult. So
can be. You said difficult,
adult, or mature.
Oh, adult.
And not just in sexual ways, but I guess it can get pretty grim or brutal or something. So, but there's people who love it. I've never played it, but the production values on the books, where they look like a work of art, I was really impressed. So it's a controversial game. Some people think it goes too far. Other people think it's amazing. So I don't know. So anyway, all right, moving on. Let's see. Last question. And then we'll get into the legal stuff going on with Comicsgate, unless you have anything else you want to talk about. Why the name comic, or why Pocket Jacks Comics? Is that like a poker term? I got jacks in my pockets, or what?
That is a poker term. Specifically Hold'em. If you're playing Hold'em, you get two cards. I don't know how much you know about Hold'em, but you get two cards. Right, I know Hold'em. And then everything else is community cards. So if both your cards are the same rank, like you have both deuces, let's call that pocket deuces. Okay. So pocket jack specifically means, and you both your Hold'em cards are jacks. Very nice. Okay, so that's why it's Pocket Jacks Comics. So obviously, I went to LA last summer to do a con, and LAX is really close to a casino where I used to play. I actually walked there from my hotel down through Inglewood to play. So I missed it. I missed being able to play in those LA casinos. And the only significant hand I won over 3 or 4 hours was Pocket Jack. So it's a hand I like, and it does well for me. Yeah, that's your thing. Yeah. All right. When I used to go to the casinos, and it's been a long time, I was a blackjack guy. I like to play blackjack. So there you go. But I have played some Texas Hold'em. Blackjack is fun. It can be unpleasant if you're playing to win and you get like a pit boss up in your face. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and give away this Maryland sticker over the next 5 minutes. So whoever wants can enjoy some Maryland. Let's see it. Let me see the sticker. Oh, that sticker. Is she holding a katana? What is that? What is she holding? All right. So she is holding I'm going to start the giveaway. Boom. So she is holding a stake. This is from a
Okay.
cover, Lords of Los Angeles, which is a friend of mine that I knew from LA, and he's making comic books, and he's on my mailing list, so he sees the success I'm having, and so he kind of made his own sexy adult comic book called Lords of LA, which is a vampire story set in Los Angeles. Because they're vampires, it happens over a variety of time periods. There's some flashbacks to decades ago because they're vampires, they live a long time, and so there's some scenes with Marilyn in it, and I got my own cover, or I commissioned my own cover for his comic books, and I sell those. I still have a few left. There was 100 issued. But then I got this really cool piece of artwork by Whiskey Paint, who's the same guy who did the Snow White. I like his art. So anyway, giveaway.
All right, wait. That's a great sticker. I like the Snow White sticker too. So
thank you.
Okay, so last question I forgot to ask: do you have an intended audience, or an audience that you find responds better to your books? Do you have like a
Sure.
Obviously, a lot of them have, they're not nude. They're not necessarily salacious or anything, but they're sexy. A lot of them have sexy covers, but not all of them. So like, what would you say your demographic that you're going for? Do you even have one?
I mean, Palace of the Golden Princess, which is my kinkiest work, seems to be fairly popular amongst a rather broad, like men like it, ladies like it. So with shows like Boobs and Dragons, Game of Thrones, it just seems like people are more comfortable having TNA elements in their entertainment. One of the things I like is that about comic books is, like, for instance, in Palace, I don't have nude interiors. I have nude covers. So if you want that, you can get the cover that's referencing that. And if other people don't want that, well, then they can get a cover which is not. And then, they're all reading the same interior pages, which are sexy, but not not the kind of thing that a comic book store would have to put in a bag.
Right. I hear you. So the thing is, I agree with you. Like, so there's always been a demographic that likes TNA. I mean, see heavy metal, right? See other stuff, right? But I would say that TNA in mainstream entertainment is more common now, right? And I would consider Game of Thrones mainstream entertainment because everybody at my workplace was watching it and talking about it. So, and no, I didn't hear anybody complain. Nobody was like, well, that's too, they're just like, oh, did you see who hooked up last night? And I was like,
no one was like, oh my God, when Emily Clark walked into the bath, like, yes, everybody likes that, so.
Right. So, it's more, I guess since it's on HBO, people could say, oh, it's more, like if they ran it on ABC primetime, probably not. But anyway, but I would still say it was mainstream with as many people were as watching it. Okay. So all of that, Preston, thanks I love hearing all that stuff. Want to get to know more about you, your company, all of that. Is there anything else you want to say about Pocket Jacks Comics or self-publishing or anything else before we move on?
Guinevere and the Divinity Factory in Diamond this month. Check it out.
Okay, so let me set the stage here, because this can be a very lightning rod topic.
Oh, yes.
We are now going to talk. If you're here to hear about Comicsgate and Preston's connection to the Comicsgate stuff going on,
and congratulations to the winner of this Maryland sticker, who's different than you or she. So hey, somebody I drew in. There we go. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Congratulations to you won Marilyn the Vampire Slayer, which was the 50s version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I still remember when Buffy the Vampire Slayer was the movie with Christy Swanson. And then it became the TV show.
Then it became
that had Luke Perry in it. It had Luke Perry in it. It had Donald Sutherland in it. Great movie. Okay. So let's talk about Comicsgate. Like I said, this could be a lightning rod topic. There are probably people either in your Whatnot chat or that are going to be listening to the podcast version.
I've been watching who's been coming in. I promise you. Yes, there are.
So and there are people that will be in the chat or that are going to be listening to my podcast episode that are on different sides of the issue, but feel passionate about it. I am not here. Now you'll probably still get a dopamine hit because we're talking about a hot button issue. I'm not here to press buttons and spew dopamine. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Comicsgate, where the current legal status is of it with the lawsuits going on. And I want to give you a forum to share your side of things. Okay. Because one thing I've learned, people, I know it's not fashionable these days to have nuance and to try to have a broader perspective. But every time there's conflict, there's usually two sides to the story. Now, let me tell people what my version of Comicsgate is. Okay. I've known people, Comicsgate blew up, what was it, 2018, 2019, whenever that was, when it really, and I actually happened to know creators that would have fallen under the Comicsgate umbrella. I actually worked for a brief time with some. I saw the behind the scenes. I saw the nastiness directed at them. I know of at least two people that got swatted because of their involvement. And these were people who were in what would be considered traditional Comicsgate, not even people who were outliers or challenging Comicsgate. But what Comicsgate means to me, Shane Stacks, Shane Plays Geek Talk, as a comic book reader, was like a lot of other people. I started noticing trends in mainstream comic books that I felt like I think there's an agenda here over telling a story. And I'm not wild about that. And so I see Comicsgate as, at least what it was for a while, a group of creators that were trying to publish stories that the big two probably wouldn't publish at the time. And we're kind of coming together. And I predicted.
Image Comics also exists, and there are a number of other comic book companies that aren't just the big two, and not all of them had a woke agenda. But in 2018, 2019, there was certainly a message that this was a broad-based indie comic creator community, which was welcoming and not at all focused on trying to ruin people's lives.
There you go. And I think that's a good way of putting it. So, and I personally, I'm trying to, without name dropping, I'm trying to make the point that I was probably actually closer to Comicsgate than a lot of people might realize. Okay. If people go through the history of my podcast, they'll probably have an idea of the people that, I was literally riding around in their cars and they were sharing. The FBI was contacting them because of stuff, and it was getting crazy. But comic books to me, or Comicsgate to me, is like how you just summed it up. It's like, hey, let's come together, let's make comic books, and nobody has to worry about being harassed or have an agenda put on their books. So now over time, I predicted to a buddy of mine, who was he and I would talk. He's like, did you hear about the latest news? And we would talk. His name's Justin, great friend of mine. Okay. And I told him at the time, I said, this is either going to come together to be the next Image Comics, or it's going to fall apart because people can't play together nicely. And of course, we all know what has happened, right? There's been fallouts because of human nature, right? This is by no means the first group of people who came together and then ended up, falling out. So, having said that, okay, there are some, what I would like to, there's no way in the time we have that I can go through and give the complete legal history of what's gone on for the past few years. But what I would like to know is what is the current legal situation of Comicsgate trademark? And then I think there's also a libel case. So,
there is also a libel case. Now, I'm not here to comment on the libel case.
Fair enough.
Comment on the trademark case. I did provide with you the transcript of the trial. I don't know if you had a chance to look through it.
I did look through especially page 22. You showed me transcript of the libel.
What I showed you where the guy's like, I said they should be shot. I said, he was a child pornographer based on comic art. I'm sorry and I'll take it down. Does that sound like a retraction to you?
He said, "I'm sorry," and I shouldn't have.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have said it. Right. And but like I said, the libel case is still ongoing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. So okay, both of us are going to claim that was like. I'm going to say, okay, well, that's Mr. Soft retracting himself, and Van Skyber's going to go, no, that was total. So I mean that the meaning of those words is itself going to be litigated, but
right. Okay, so but basically it's an ongoing libel trial, so you can't really talk a lot about it right now. Is that okay? So, so a libel trial is different. Right. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But for the benefit of the
who is there in the chat has her own version of reality. He did say specifically, "I apologize that's in there." I mean, you read those words, did you not? Or am I making stuff up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You read the transcript. It's in there, Vicky. Yes, that's an under oath admission. You don't get your own reality. Thank you.
Okay. So remember how I mentioned earlier that there was a live chat going on in Preston's Whatnot stream while I was recording for this podcast. Well, one of the members of the chat is Vicky, aka the Vickyverse, as she goes by on Twitter. And there's going to be a lot of exchanges with Preston responding to comments that Vicky is making in the chat. I don't know the whole history here, so take everything I'm about to say here with a grain of salt, but evidently Vicky and Preston were, if not friends, then at least allies for a while in the whole Comicsgate world, and then something happened, and now they are at odds. And in fact, Vicky either was or still is on the receiving end of Preston's libel suit. So she was basically, I would say, railing at him in the chat pretty much the entire Comicsgate discussion. So, and occasionally he'll respond to it. So that's what's going on there. And also, to give credit where credit's due, she reached out to me before I did the recording with Preston, and she sent me a very interesting, helpful document that shows the whole timeline of I think the trademark case, and I've linked that at the show notes for this episode on shaneplays.com. All right. Well, I'll let you and Vicky work your own. And
Vicky is a hater. She's hello.
Well, she sent me some messages on X earlier today.
Okay.
And provided a timeline of the trademark and stuff, and so that was helpful. But whatever's going on between you and Vicky, especially since there's a libel trial going on, I mean, I'll let that be between you and Vicky. So I'm not here. I'm not here. Like I said, I'm not trying to spew dopamine all over people. So Vicky, who is in the chat, is obviously has a disagreement with you.
Yes.
And you know what? She's entitled to have a disagreement with you because we're all entitled to, and that'll work out in court, however it works out.
Well, so, I mean, look, the Vicky thing's already done. And notice, what is it? You sued me. Well, yes, you were endorsing statements that you knew to not be true, that were calling for violence, that were saying I was a child. You were there. You were doing that. You incurred some liability. She got off on jurisdictional grounds. I decided not to sue her in South Carolina. Life moves on. I mean, the statement, we already have Mr. Soft's retraction. I'm content to let that go. And here we are. And now I have her in my chat. Welcome, whatever, so.
Yeah, she's obviously, and again, I am not trying to play favorites here. I want people to be able to present their side. And then there we go. So but what I'm trying to get to is, so there's a libel case that obviously there's people that feel passionate about. I mean, you can hear Preston responding to Vicky, aka Vickyverse, in the Whatnot chat right now. So she's still very passionate about this.
She's very passionate about this stuff. She was there posting on Twitter yesterday. Well, when are you going to tell them the trademark case that like I've clearly lost and I have no claim to it at all? Like that's not what the trademark case shows. But and she's just there being a hater. Because okay, fine.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. if you're on two different sides of a libel lawsuit, there's probably not going to be a lot of great feelings either way, right? So, so anyway, all right. So, but we did say at the beginning that the libel lawsuit was not going to be the predominant discussion here. It's still ongoing. I don't know if maybe your lawyer's telling you not to talk to me. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, like Mr. Soft at trial wanted to present like, well, here he is talking about it on his YouTube channel. He must not be very upset. So like any reference I make to the thing will be referenced and clipped and potentially evidence that maybe he's not really upset enough that essentially it's, it's just easier not to comment.
Okay. So the other thing is, and the libel lawsuit is adjacent to the Comicsgate stuff, but it's not directly relevant to the trademark.
By it, but yeah,
right. It's spawned by it, but it's not. It's not directly related to whether the trademark office is gonna. It's not going to have any bearing on how the trademark office.
No.
Okay.
None.
So. And I know people, if you want Vickyverse's side, she's on X as Vickyverse. Go reach out to her. I'm not trying to squelch anybody. I'm not trying to squelch anybody here. What is it? Do you have a handle on X, Preston? Do you hang out on X?
Comicsjacks.
Comicsjacks. So just at Comicsjacks.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can talk to both of them.
Yes. And then that's my preferred platform.
You can talk to both of them.
Facebook. Yeah.
Okay. So, so libel, immediately lightning rod on the libel stuff. So moving over to the trademark case.
Yes.
What is the legal, and like I said, it would take an hour, if not more, to go through all the history. And Vickyverse, thank you for sending me that, because that was interesting to look through the history of all the different motions and stuff in the trademark thing. What is the current legal situation with the trademark or the Comicsgate trademark?
Okay. Currently, there is a petition for cancellation where I am the petitioner, and in each court, you have little special terms. Okay.
So let me. Well, yeah. Sorry, I realize I need to give a little bit more background information here. So there's a Comicsgate trademark that's like all one word. And then there's another Comicsgate.
They're effectively the same. They're
the same. Okay, so there's no distinction. Okay, because I mentioned that earlier today, and Vicky was even like, no, there's no distinction there. So you're trying to cancel it, or you're trying to own it? What's going on right now with Comicsgate trademark?
So it depends on the time, because as you're pointing out, this started in I want to say late 2020 going into 2021, where I was approved a provisional trademark for the USPTO for the use of the Comicsgate trademark. So if we look at what I was doing there, well, then clearly at that point I was seeking to own it. But then, so I got approved provisionally, and then there was we have to do something. Who they are, I'm not the conspiracy that was, we have to do something. So then Antonio Malpica revived his former abandoned at the time trademark application. All right, and then the USPTO, for Comicsgate. Whether it was one word or two, it doesn't matter. So
now let me clarify also. I don't know how trademark works. Is this just in use with publishing comic books, or would it be?
No, just in use. Right. This is specifically for comic books.
Okay.
So,
go on.
All right. So then, the appropriate procedure. All right, when we're going to deny you now, kind of retroactively. And trademark law is kind of weird. I'm discovering his application was abandoned, but he can kind of retroactively go back and restart it again, and we'll consider that superior. And that trademark claim was based on a comic book called Detective Dead.
Okay.
All right. So what we did is we waited until, so then they issue a provisional trademark to Malpica based on his revived filing, and then we issued a petition to cancel that, and that case is still ongoing all these years later. So that case is still ongoing as of today.
Okay, so you want, okay, so this is what I'm trying to get to, because I've spent a considerable amount of time in the past few days trying to, I'm trying to get, because it looks like there's been a few phases of this Comicsgate trademark.
Yes, yes.
And you want, so I'm still unclear. Like, I went through it and tried to untangle the spaghetti because it's gone on for a while. I can
make it real easy for you.
Yeah. So who, like, I still don't understand, like, are you trying to get ownership, or are you trying to obliterate the trademark?
At this point, all I can say is I am the petitioner seeking to cancel Malpica's registration, which has subsequently been assigned to Ethan Van Sciver. So, and then once that resolves, then I, have the superior claim based on the applicant. But at that point, who even knows if I want to do it, like years later? I'm just saying, as of today, in my legal status, I am petitioner in a petition for cancellation, the trademark claim currently assigned to Ethan Van Sciver from Antonio Malpica way back when.
So you want to evacuate that, you want to nullify that and say that doesn't apply. Okay.
Right.
Anybody, so I have to, this is for the event, or this is for the benefit of my podcast listeners who may not know. Ethan Van Sciver, also known as EVS, either affectionately or unaffectionately, depending on where you stand, is probably the biggest current name in because he worked professionally, I think, for DC Comics, doing Green Lantern, some other stuff. I think maybe he's a comic book artist. He's proven himself quite good at building a following online, like on Twitter or whatever.
I mean, yes and no. I would say, having monitored and interacted with his following over time, the faces change. And I saw something like way back in 2020, 2021, he had made some post to Kiwi Farms about these are like the official like Comicsgate channels, and it was Yellow Flash and some other guy who did like Downcast, I forget his name, and now there were like slashes through most of them because he churns through people,
right. Yeah, you had at one time you had Yellow Flash, you had that Umbrella guy, you had several, and they were all getting involved for a while.
At one point in time. This was a long time ago. It was being Vickyverse versus War Campaign. That was ages ago.
Isn't that strange?
But that just gives you an idea of how much churn there is amongst his following in the community. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vickyverse, I definitely recognize Vickyverse's handle. I know she's been in the mix. Because I used to go on the streams a little bit when everyone was hanging out and getting along, and that was such a good time. And I think my buddy, who at one time I predicted, I think he's listening to this stream now, and I said it's either going to be the next Image Comics or it's all going to fall apart. So. Okay, so right now, you don't have active legal statuses or anything in the mix to take over Comicsgate. Your thing is I want to nullify what's already there, and then you may or may not do something.
It's difficult to really develop a broad plan. And as Lee Duva has pointed out, as Vickyverse has pointed out, as Doug Tenaple has pointed out, it's a very toxic brand. And sure.
It is.
Yes, it
has become toxic.
It has.
Yeah, and which I feel bad because for a while there was a lot of goodwill and good relations around Comicsgate.
Yeah.
They were butting heads with the mainstream creators, but within the community itself, it was fairly good feeling and let's all get along. And I was like, man, something really amazing can come out of this. But
Sure.
And then, but anyway, so, kind of playing off of Liduva's comment here where she said, why, do you truly want the Comicsgate trademark and all that? I was going to ask you, okay, sure. So now I want to, what motivated you in the first place to get involved? Because I've gone through a lot of your like a lot of your posts over the past few years, and you did a YouTube channel where you'd summarize. I have a hard time, and maybe you're doing that on purpose because you're trying not to tell people how to think or something. I don't know, but I have a hard time figuring out where you land. Like,
I was doing my best to be objective, and that's sad that most people just don't. But I really wanted to just try and put out reality as it was, as opposed to painting some narrative that you then abandon. And I don't know. Did you feel like there was some objectivity there in the way I was presenting things?
So my take on it was that you were trying to be objective. You're trying to people say, hey, EVS did this, so-and-so did this, and just reporting. Right. Yeah. But it did seem like
it was a toxic group of people that were, like Ethan was just sicking his fans on just like one creator after another, and like every couple of weeks, here was, the Wheelers. He was going after Mindy Wheeler, and then he was going after Tim Lin, and then he was going after Doug TenNapel, and then it's just going. And now he's going after Yellow Flash, and now he's going after Eric July. All former friends and associates, and I mean, this was a trend that wasn't hard for me to suss out way back in 2019, 2020, and I was like, okay, this seems bad. Yeah. So, yes. So they're making
famous fallout. I'd say another famous fallout was the Brightwisers. They got thick for a while, and then boom, they fell out. So, but I would say that it seemed like you're trying to be objective, but you did seem to occasionally, kind of go after what I would call like the toxic chest beating, overly masculine, or I don't know how to put it, like where it's like, I'm going to crush you just because I can crush you because I have all these followers now.
Yeah,
or,
a bully, yes.
Yeah, a bully. Yeah. So who else? Yeah, we got Cheyenne's doing a good job. Oh, the succubus sticker. Go ahead and talk about the
succubus sticker. There you go. Whoever wants it.
Yeah. So we've given away a Marilyn Monroe vampire hunter, and you've also given away that Snow White that has the X.
I have.
Yeah. So, and then also another thing, anytime you have a big movement, somebody's going to come along and try to co-op that movement, whether it's corporate interest or something else. So, I've watched sort of the evolution of Comicsgate, but I've also seen some good creators and some good books getting delivered that have come out of it. So, so good for them. But yeah, so that,
what would you say your favorite Comicsgate book is?
Honestly, my personal favorite, I don't know if it could be considered Comicsgate anymore, but it would be Black Hops with Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini.
I have bad news for you. I don't think that's Comicsgate. And Vicky
they were in
like Monster MD. I'm like, okay, well, and this is really, it really comes down to what at the bottom of this case is, what does it mean to be Comicsgate?
Well, right. But see, Tim Lim, but I will tell you, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini at the beginning were solidly in the Comicsgate circle. That's what I'm talking about. People coming out of it. I'm not saying that they would stick the Comicsgate label on it now, but that team came out of that Comicsgate movement is the point I'm making. So I couldn't even tell you what Comicsgate comics are at the moment.
This is interesting for historians of Twitter and YouTube lore. But if we want to talk about legally, which I think is why you asked me here, what Comicsgate means as opposed to the trademark gets kind of goofy. Because I mentioned that I started out petitioning to cancel Malpica's claim, which was based on Detective Dead. But the case has since morphed in kind of bizarre ways. So, do you know where it's at? What did Vicky tell you in terms of where it's at now, since she provided you with
Nothing. To her credit, she said, "Here's the case history." Okay. So, and I spent some time looking through it, and I see that, there's been some continuances, and I mean that any possible trial isn't even scheduled right now for till 2025. Right. So, where are you? Where would you say the case is right now?
So, it's in bizarre land, all right? Because my initial petition, which I don't know if you read it, but it references okay, we believe Antonio Malpica didn't. If you look at his trademark application, it's this is use in print for Detective Dead, which never came out. And so that was the basis of my original, my initial claim. So what we did is a maneuver.
But now, hold on. Let me interrupt you real quick there. Did they not try to argue that? But I farmed the trademark out to other people, so it counts. Was that not the counter argument to that?
So I was initially petitioning to cancel that specific thing. I just need to focus, document, and time. Right? I'm filing with. Okay, I'm canceling Antonio Malpica's, which is based on Detective Dead. All right. We then did a maneuver that had just been unveiled, and that's we could petition the USPTO to go, hey, examiner, can you look at or relook at this trademark application? And so based on what Antonio Malpica replied with, because he was representing himself, and so he put down a whole bunch of different admissions that he never came out with Detective Dead. And so seems like case closed, right? He didn't do it. That was what his application was based on. So we submitted initially a motion for judgment based on that. And then the board came back with, well, in the meantime, Ethan Van Sciver got transferred the trademark from Malpica, and his attorney enters. And for whatever reason, the board was like, well, Malpica may have said those things, and maybe they're considered under oath admissions because, filed in court documents, but who really knows what he was up to? So, okay. So then by the way, stickers coming up. Who got the sticker? Let's see. Winner.
Nemo Griffin.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on getting the sticker. So then we did a petition to re-examine, which was a new thing that came out. And we just went to the USPTO and go, hey, can you look at this? Because this guy filed these documents saying he never put out the book. That was the basis of his trademark claim. So then they decide to look at or re-examine Malpica's original filing, which was based on Detective Dead. And the trademark case between me and Van Sciver got suspended while that was considered. And that was like a 9-month to 1 year pause. Okay. So during the re-examination case, they don't talk about Detective Dead. Instead, they talk about the comic book I sent you and the link to
which is
Fund My Comic.
Okay.
And you looked at it and you didn't even know it was really related to the case.
No, it didn't jump right out at me.
You see, again, it's like the lore of Ethan's claim to the comic is based on 6 degrees of separation at this point, a book you've never heard of.
Right. Dark of Midnight.
Go ahead.
Now, further down the page, not immediately, it does mention that it says...
If you please read
permission to use a version of the Comicsgate trademark. That's all it says.
Right.
So
yeah. So hold on. Let me go. I'm gonna read this one because it seemed kind of weird. But you go to Fund My Comic, you look at the description, which is now based on Romano's claim, and it's. All right. Dark of Midnight, The Art of Anthony Romano was a 24-page art book in the comic book format that was published by Dark Gift Comics in May of 2020 on Lulu.com. It was a collection of art samples drawn throughout the years. Given permission to use a version of the Comicsgate trademark by Antonio Malpica, a.k.a. Critias, the owner of, at the time, Anthony went on to put up the logo on the book. The two didn't know that their cooperation at the time amounted to a valid implied license. nor that 2 years later the book would be the crux of a legal battle for the ownership of the Comicsgate trademark. So when Ethan Van Sciver is now kind of applying to or answering the board for reexamination, they come up with, okay, it wasn't Detective Dead, it was that book, which became the basis and the crux. And as you see in there in the wording, well, they didn't know at the time, but really it was... So we don't have any paperwork on those records, those communications. So coming out of when our case got unsuspended and the USPTO goes, okay, sounds okay to us, we'll give it a pass. We can now argue things like, well, gee, at the time, Anthony Romano and Antonio Malpica on their original applications, which are under oath admissions, you have to go, no, I really mean this, it's serious, being totally honest, said that this was their own intellectual property and not used with a license. So they're saying one thing on their apps, and now after the fact, they're saying this different thing. And that's a cool legal argument we could make. But first, we got to get their official record of things. So we've served a bunch of discovery. We've noticed depositions back in December. And we'd like to come in and ask people some questions because the record keeping seems, well, essentially, was there valid record keeping for a trademark being done or not? That is what it comes down to. And that is a question that, hey, I told my attorney, like, if they provide evidence that they've got a solid claim based on your legal analysis, great. But right now they haven't really provided any evidence at all. And we've noticed these depositions in December. It's April. They still haven't provided us any dates. So they seem to be kind of stalling. The idea that it's a slam dunk, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Well, I'll let you know once I actually get a look at the evidence. But that seems kind of a sketchy, tenuous link of, well, really it was Anthony Romano who was using Malpica's trademark registration for Captain Midnight that he sold to his brother this one copy of, and that's the basis of Ethan Van Sciver's claim.
Okay. And then I'm looking at the case history and the most recent action from the trademark office is they granted an extension on discovery. That's what I'm seeing here. Okay. Yes. So case isn't closed, still ongoing. Right. One thing I will say, I've seen people say, well, they've already decided that's open and shut. And I mean, you can challenge something and say, maybe you didn't know all the information. Can we revisit this? It's kind of what's going on right now. So that's how I read it anyway. But if you go to trial, go ahead.
What did I just say in regards to how is Ethan slowing things down? Because I did mention it. Just because Vicky's like, how is Ethan's like, he agreed to extend discovery. Okay. And the records requests and the depositions we've noticed that we've never been given dates for. I was very explicit about how this was being slowed down. I don't know why she's got to just hate everything I said. But yes, if once we've been given, adequate records that, oh, wow, they really ran it like a trademark, or no, they didn't, we can make it that decision. So,
okay. So, but right now, the legal status, objectively, without no opinion, objectively, is there has been an extension granted for discovery. And according to the timeline that I see, the first time that this could go into, I see timeline going out to 2020, all the way out to 2025 here. So there's a trial period. There's rebuttal periods. So this is by no means going to finish tomorrow or anything like that. No. Which that brings me to my next question. It kind of ties into a question that was asked earlier. So as Preston Poulter, why do you want to do all this? Like, what is and I'm asking from an objective standpoint, like to go through a trial process, to go through all the money and the effort. It's what is it? Why is it? Do you just feel that it's going to be misused if somebody else gets it, or what is your personal investment, and why do you want to do this?
I felt that the name was certainly being misused, because there would be these people, you would talk to them, and Comicsgate is just this nice collection of happy people who want to make comics. Oh, but it's also like the name of Ethan Van Sciver's hit crew whenever he wants to rile people up and go target that guy, so it seemed like an abuse of the name, an abuse of the concept. So that was the thinking I was on way back when, in 2019, 2020, 2021. 3 or 4 years later, that's when you start walking down the litigation road, and you just keep walking down at some point. I'm like, okay.
Right.
I mean, like I said, I'm ready to say I'm done if they can provide that, evidence that they were treating it validly as a trademark. I haven't seen that.
All right. So what is your, obviously you're wanting them to nullify or cancel the trademark as this outcome, right? That's what you're suing to have happen or whatever, or not. Yeah. I don't know if it's considered suing in the trademark process,
exactly.
But
what do you call it?
You're applying, you're asking for this to happen.
Yes.
What is, other than it getting vacated, nobody owns it. Like, on a personal level, what does that mean to you? Like, what have you, obviously you would have one, nothing. So, all right. You just don't want other people to have it, or certain people to have it, not just anybody, but you just don't want certain people to have the trademark.
I got into this under the naive assumption that, Malpica never actually put out his book that he used as the basis of it, and this would be a quick thing, right?
Right. And now you're getting a non-free education on the legal system. So
exactly.
What? So, like, if you let's say that you win your case. They say, no, they don't own the Comicsgate trademark.
Right.
I mean, if I know you're not committing.
And I got to say, Vickyverse here, you got into it because Ethan made fun of you. At the time, Vicky was championing me, saying, yes, this is a horrible organization. It needs to end. And she was absolutely my number one advocate. But, how time changes people. Well, you just got into it because Ethan made fun of you. Okay, fine, Vicky. So what can I say? She's entitled to these altering realities of her own motives at times. And my motive for why do I want to take down Comicsgate is something that people speculate about. And there's a legal argument being made by Ethan's attorney that I have unclean hands, meaning they intend to go at trial and say, well, even if we didn't really keep good records, Preston's got bad intent, so we shouldn't even listen to him. I find that kind of a bizarre legal argument, but whatever.
All right. So I'm not even saying what your plans are after this case.
Right.
But I'm saying, is there any, as a comic book publisher, whether it's you or whether it's Ethan Van Sciver, or let's say that that I get into publishing comics.
Okay.
Is there any profit motive for putting a Comicsgate trademark these days? Or is it just a moral thing? I mean, is putting the Comicsgate trademark on something these days going to help its commercial prospects?
I would say I would have to probably agree with Doug TenNapel that there's more negative associated with it than positive.
Right. Right. Okay. But having said that, we're in speculation mode here. You don't own the trademark. You're in the middle of a leak. But if hypothetically you had the trademark, would you put it on your books?
At this point, I would probably sell it to somebody that wants to do something with it. Like I've so far removed from.
Right. I got you. Do you any idea of what the conditions would be? Like, you have to treat the trademark in certain ways.
Yeah, I think, it needs to be run like a trademark. You need to, I think I put out some conditions for behavior way back when, when I was like provisionally awarded it back in like 2020, 2021. Just, don't abuse customer information, stuff like that. But, like once you sell it, you can put those terms in, but good luck.
Interesting. So and from what I understand, like I said, we can't open this whole can of worms,
right.
and you might have even already mentioned some of this stuff. We've gone over a lot of legal ground. At one time,
yes,
somebody applied for the trademark, and Ethan Van Sciver went after them because they said, no, I've had my YouTube channel called Comicsgate, so I common law own this trademark. And so then he sued, and then you're also... So
well, I don't know
so
if there
people
was a sue.
sue.
I think there was a cease and desist.
A cease and desist. And he was basing it not on any actual legal application to your trademark. He was just saying, well, I've already been using it for a couple of years. So
yes. And by the way, people keep pointing to, well, Ethan Van Sciver uses it in his show. But when it came time for the re-examination, he didn't make that argument. He made Anthony Romano licensed it from Malpica and then gave it to me argument. So it's all based on Captain Midnight.
Captain Midnight.
Whatever.
All right. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, I can't believe the long, crazy road it's been, but here we are.
Here we are.
And you're trying to see it through. Now, do you think you're trying to see it through just because you're stubborn? You're like, nope, I'm this far. I'm not letting it go. Or are you still like in your heart, like, no way do they get the Comicsgate trademark?
No, I'm prepared to accept whatever comes from the board. In regards,
but you're seeing it through. You have no plans to give up.
Well, all right. So I started, like I said, kind of naively thinking, well, this shouldn't be that long because Antonio Malpica never put out Detective Dead. But then the libel case happened because as part of the trademark fighting, Ethan goes on and makes a statement, well, I have to get the trademark to keep Preston from putting it on child pornography. And so that spawned that whole thing. And then I sued Ethan for libel because he shouldn't say that. And then he countersued saying, well, trademark infringement. So now I'm being like, okay, I'm being sued for millions of dollars in a counterclaim for trademark infringement. Well, that was my other
question. Yeah, so that was my other question. So you have your case, and we haven't even touched on his counter case, right?
Right.
Okay. So what is the distinction there? How can you have two cases over the same thing?
All right.
Like, how does that work?
Okay. If you have the plaintiff, because now we're talking about, and here's the facts I wish to present, or at least, the allegations I wish to prove at trial. And then here's the claim for damages. And then the other guys can go, oh yeah, well, I'm going to make another claim. So then if you come down on like settlement, like this happened, let's talk about a case we all know. In the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, right? He was suing Amber Heard for defamation, right? Amber Heard was countersuing him for defamation. They were both citing like, well, this stuff got said over here. And then in the judgment, it came out for Depp, and it was a certain amount for Johnny Depp based on what Amber Heard said, minus a certain amount of damages which we're going to say were inflicted on Amber Heard by Johnny Depp statements equals the amount of money that Johnny Depp should be receiving from Amber Heard. So that's how a counterclaim works.
Okay, so, and as was pointed out in chat by Vicky Verse, I'll give credit. Right. She's adding. Right. She's not always railing at you. Sometimes she's providing facts here.
Okay.
So basically, one is civil. So it sounds like Ethan's lawsuit against you is in civil court, whereas yours is with the trade with the P.
No, it's the same case. It's the same. We're going to show up at trial, and I'm going to argue one thing, and he's going to argue another thing.
Oh, so it's the same trial. Okay.
Same trial.
Interesting. All right. So other...
and that is why, look, his claim is laughable. The only people who seem to take it seriously are Vicky, but Vicky's a hater. What can I say? I don't know why.
So what?
I blew smoke up her out, whatever that means. Vicky disagreed with me one day, and here she is hating perpetually.
Well, I hope
more. Yeah.
I hope that eventually you and Vicky reconcile. So if y'all used to be friends. So, yeah, well, you never know. Strange things have happened. You never know. Something else might come along that you guys both become allies on. You never know.
No.
You know,
she enjoys
it's gone too far.
Anyway.
Gone too far, huh? Okay. So last question to kind of get to I'm trying to get to the meat of who Preston Poulter is, not just the kind of, if you had it all to do all over
that could
again,
be a longer conversation.
Yeah. Well, if you had to do it all over again, and obviously feel free to say I'm not going to answer this, but if you had it to do all over again, would you have initiated the trademark legal stuff?
I have no idea. Like, so much has happened since then. Like, because of that, like, for instance, I was just at like a comic show, and there was an artist for Marvel who was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy from the Thing who is in the Ethan Van Sciver, like litigation over there." So I get some play in that regard, and Ethan Van Sciver is not a very popular figure, so the fact that people tend to know me as that guy who's against Ethan Van Sciver is not altogether bad.
All right. Well, I would say that within a certain circle, Ethan's very well known, but in the larger, he's definitely ruffled feathers in the industry.
I didn't say he wasn't well known. I said he's not particularly well liked. If I said he's well known, I misspoke. If like when you're at shows and his name comes up, people tend to go, "Oh, yeah."
Well, and I'm being careful about my remarks on Ethan Van Sciver. I think I've tweeted with him once or twice. I've never talked to Ethan Van Sciver. I've never met him. I've seen what they used to call it the Reddit effect. I'll call it the EVS effect, where he piles on people. I have seen that. But I've never met the guy. So I don't know if his public persona is completely different from his private. I know nothing. So having seen you online and hung out with you at a con a couple of times, I feel like you're pretty much the same guy. Hanging out
100%. Like I don't put on airs for anybody. And
all right,
and I'm it's, I guess, how I keep sane, I see people that absolutely like, look, there have been people who said horrible things about me online, but when I'm talking to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about that. That was for the crowd, but really behind the scenes, I kind of like you. We can hang out. We can, like, okay."
Well, no, if you it's like a genuine thing that if you watch these talking head shows on the cable channels at night, the cable news channels, they will tear each other up. But on commercial breaks, they're just sitting there chatting and being friendly.
Yes.
So much of it is practically kayfabe. The wrestling. It's to get dopamine hits, baby.
Yes.
So, which I know by not trying to do 2020 ambush journalism on you, my podcast won't get as many listens, but that's not how I roll. I want to give you the chance to share your side and look for nuance. So, and if EVS ever wanted to come on my show, I'd give him his platform too. So, but I don't know EVS. I know you. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing you run your GURPS. So, what is it? Mecca?
Thank you.
Mecca Salvage Group?
I've been writing it, and I had a thought, and more than a thought. I've been putting time into designing different victory point scenarios, like running it kind of tournament style with like victory point scenarios for different sides. And, there's going back to Aliens, we have a lieutenant who's kind of in charge and diplomatic, and we got like a grunt with a big machine gun, and he got a technician who can, work the mechanics on the mechs and whatnot. Because when you play, I'll get back to those people in a bit. Because, when you play Battletech at the end of the game, there's like...
was that Vicky calling to bury the hatchet? I have to ask, was Vicky calling you to bury the hatchet? Is that what that was? Okay.
But yeah.
So anyway, you were talking about your GURPS, and folks, if you're confused what I'm talking about, I juked us over into a role-playing game discussion out of the blue. So if you're wondering what we're talking about the GURPS role-playing game that he's running here in a month at a con. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to wrap us up. Preston, thank you so much for the time. It's been very gracious. I feel very open.
I do my best.
You've tried to give open answers. I appreciate that. It's a sensitive subject. Mm-hmm. It's probably the most lightning rod subject I can personally think of that I've been involved with somewhat in the past several years. But so I'm about to wrap us up, folks. So if you have any last minute questions in chat for Preston that you want to make it into the podcast, hard hitting journalism, folks, throw it in there. So do you have anything else you want to say for the record, Preston, about anything? The Comicsgate, the lawsuits, your publishing company, anything, any final thoughts?
Guinevere and the Divinity
Factory.
More
stickers to give away.
In Diamond, I gave away 4 stickers. 4 stickers I'm going to mail out today to all the... As I describe these Whatnot streams, I'm just kind of bribing my fans to hang out and listen to me. But... And I'm going to be liquidating a lot of White Widow on Friday, so feel free to come down on that one. But look, Guinevere's in comic book stores and check it out. Let's see. Do you have any leftover covers of White Widow? Yes, I have. I have over a long box full. Friday's stream. It's you can go.
So they're saying which volume?
Profiles Friday.
Do you have everything? They're asking which volume. Do you have it all?
White Widow only had about 8 issues. I think I have the first 7. And the thing is, there were so many covers. White Widow 1 had over 100 variant covers. So I have.
Wow,
White Widow 1,
that's a record.
It was insane. So there are many White Widows, and I will be going through most of them. But if you just want 1 to 7, sure, that's not hard. I've got
Friday
a long box and plus of White Widow. I'm going to try and go through.
What you should do to promote this, you need to go find Billy Idol and pay him to do a cover of It's a Great Day for a White Widow on Friday. It's a great day for a White Widow on Friday. So I have an idea. But
Lee has another question. How close am I to the creator of White Widow? White Widow is a collaboration between Jamie Tyndall and Benny Powell. And last year at Fan Expo Dallas, I was in the Renew line, to go sign up to get your booth for, this upcoming show. And I was just right there with Jamie Tyndall. And and he told me Benny's, he's looking at his phone, Benny's messaging me, asking me if I can give him a pass. And Jamie Tyndall gets a big corner booth. So he's got a lot of badges.
Right.
No, the bloom is off that rose. Those two are no longer really collaborating. So, I don't think White Widow is going any farther than number 8. This is not going to be a trade. I doubt it.
Last question, and then I'm going to wrap us up. Lee Duva wants to know: Will there be a trade? Will there be a trade paperback
for White Widow? I have no idea. I doubt it, but I don't know.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. I don't know, Preston. I don't know if you've ever listened to the show, but I always end it with the bad joke of the week. Even though the podcast is only monthly now, I used to be weekly when I was on the radio. So it's the name is incorrect, but it just has a nice ring to it to say the bad joke of the week. So let me look over my notes and make sure I didn't forget to ask you about anything.
Sure.
I think we covered it. Time blah 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 blah. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Ready? I'm limbering up to ask you the bad joke. All right. And I forgot. I got so wrapped up in my last podcast, I forgot to do the bad joke, which I never do that. So, why do astronauts use Linux?
Why?
Because you can't open windows in space.
There you go. That's.
You're supposed to groan as if I gave you awesome. Psychic damage. Okay, I got another one for you. Do you like bad jokes? Do you like bad jokes?
Who likes bad jokes?
Do you like them?
No.
I love bad jokes. All right.
Okay, go.
So, why did the computer catch a cold?
I don't know.
Someone left a window open.
Windows focused jokes. I noticed.
They are, yeah. There's sort of a theme here. There was sort of a theme here. So I couldn't find any White Lily related jokes. I probably could have found some Russian jokes to celebrate. In Russia, we laugh at that jokes.
There's a ton of those. Yes.
Cheyenne 70 said, "Why did the tissue dance? Someone left a boogie in it."
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, you laugh at that one. I see how it is.
Yeah, this is good.
What's a cat's favorite cereal?
Don't know.
Mice Krispies.
There you go.
Let's see. He likes Cheyenne's jokes better. Oh, well. I've been upstaged on my own show by Cheyenne 70. All right. Okay, last. I'm going to allow one more question, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Ladivo has another question. Said, speaking of White Lily, Preston, will you do a comic on the Night Witches?
There is one by the guy who did Punisher. I forget his name off the top of my head. But there is a or a Night Witches comic out there, and you can go ahead and pick that up. I didn't write it. I'm not going to answer the question directly. No, I'm not going to do anything on the Night Witches. They get brought up frequently when I'm talking about White Lily. People will go, "Oh, what about the Night Witches?" And I'm like, they existed, but the fighter group.
I'm sorry, that was funny. Yeah. They existed.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
you're telling the jokes.
Yeah, it's like I have to. You're proposing I make a story about it. Like, all right, so what did the Night Witches do? They flew biplanes at nighttime over German encampments and lobbed grenades / bombs. And they did that mission about 5 or 6 times a night. They were good at what they did. And their survival rate was fairly high, like 95, 96% of them survived to then go after the war, become housewives and whatnot. The fighter group, those women were like entire squadrons were like being lost in their battle with the Luftwaffe during the daytime. So when I'm looking at the fighter group, there's a lot of drama there because there's so much death, and there's the question of, are we even going to keep going up and doing this? So I don't see that there's a lot of just inherent story to the Night Witches. And I did read the Night Witches novel, and I noticed like a lot of it is not necessarily based on history. There's like, oh, we had to parachute out, and now there's this big gun battle between like the Night Witches and the Germans. Like, okay, but that's not really what they did for the most part, So
it reminds me, evidently it's a true story where the Japanese were building a fake wooden town. Or an airfield or airstrip or something like that to deceive the British or the Allies. And when they were finished, the British dropped a wooden bomb on the runway. So to kind of say, yeah, we know. Anyway, I love all that back and forth psyops stuff. All right, man, I'm going to wrap us up. You've been wonderful with your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
I hope the Whatnot keeps working out for you. I love seeing all these little ways that creators.
I mean, I like Whatnot. It seems like a good place to start doing streams and community because, like I said, it's product focused, and I can give stuff away as opposed to super chat focused, which I think I would rather be rewarded and incentivized to put out books that people want to grab than say things that people want to agree with or have other people in the chat give money to have their thought of the day expressed more, so yeah.
Well, Preston, thanks so much. Good luck with everything.
Absolutely.
You're
enjoy the stickers before.
Yes. Yeah. Check out all the sticker. Congratulations to the sticker winners. Folks, if you, for those of you all listening to Whatnot, you can go to shaneplays.com. Check me out if you're curious about that. I've got all my podcast archive there. It's comic books, games, video games, role-playing games, TVs, movie shows, TV shows. It's just geek. If it's geeky and fun to talk about, I probably have a show on it. So, well, anyway, all right. Thanks again, Preston. I'm going to wrap up my show here. For everybody else, we will catch you next time on Shane Plays. Thanks so much for listening to Shane Plays Geek Talk. I certainly hope you enjoyed this journey into the things we love. For your convenience, show notes with helpful links for each episode can always be found at shaneplays.com. You can catch the podcast in several places, including on the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, Amazon Music, Verbal, YouTube, and more. If you like what you hear and would like to support Shane Plays Geek Talk, you can do so for as little as $1 per episode on Patreon at patreon.com/ShanePlays. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Stay geeky, my friends.